I'm Betsy Martin, and I'm here to tell you about the Wildlife Sanctuary Program and the practices we teach our clients to create healthy habitat. A major study found that wild bird populations in North America have declined by almost a third since 1970, a loss of almost 3 billion birds. Habitat loss is the cause, more than twice as important as any other factor. We humans have taken what once looked like this and turned it into this. We've transformed woodland into a sterile monoculture of turf grass lawns and decorative alien plant species. Lawn is more than half the yard. We've destroyed wildlife habitat in pursuit of our own purposes, with no accommodation for the other creatures that once lived there. We need to find ways to share it, invite wildlife back into our yards, and expand the territory where they can make a living. The purpose of the Wildlife Sanctuary Program is to help property owners create real functional habitat on their own properties. We aim to change landscaping practices in ways that support wildlife and are less damaging to the environment. We encourage homeowners to learn about and engage with nature by observing the wild inhabitants of their own backyards. People learn about us primarily through our website, by word of mouth, and through tabling events and presentations. When they submit a request, a wildlife sanctuary ambassador visits to walk the yard with the client and recommend ways to create healthy habitat that provides food, nest sites, shelter and cover, and water. Most properties we visit are residential, but we also visit faith communities, HOA common areas, retirement communities, all sorts of places. The Wildlife Sanctuary Program operates in 7 Virginia counties. In Loudoun County, our partner Loudoun Wildlife Conservancy funds and operates the Wildlife Sanctuary Program. In the others, it's the Northern Virginia Bird Alliance. At the heart of our program is the Healthy Yard Pledge that is required for certification. The Healthy Yard Pledge includes 6 of these 7 habitat best practices that I'd like to give an overview of. First, do no harm. Reduce hazards to wildlife. It makes no sense to create habitat to attract wildlife and then put them in danger through careless or thoughtless actions, such as poorly designed windows that birds crash into, or light and noise pollution. But the biggest hazard is cats, second only to habitat loss as a cause of declines in bird populations. Cat predation dwarfs the next most significant human cause of bird deaths, window collisions. We provide information to clients about how to reduce hazards and encourage them to keep their pet cats indoors. Second habitat best practice is to remove exotic invasive plants. Invasive plants like English ivy climb trees and bring them down, like this young sycamore right down the street from me. They spread into natural areas, displace native vegetation, and they create hazards to people. Ambassadors help clients identify the invasives growing in their yards and recommend their removal. We provide information about invasive identification and treatment, such as fact sheets from Blue Ridge Prison. We're concerned not only about invasive exotic plants. Whether they're invasive or not, exotic plants don't benefit wildlife. A study by Narango, Talamy, and Mara that used local data from Neighborhood Nest Watch found that yards planted with non-natives essentially starve chickadees. They don't support the caterpillars chickadees need to feed their young. Chickadees are much less likely to nest in non-native yards, and when they try to, they're less successful. A yard is not a sanctuary for chickadees unless 70% or more of the plant material is native. This brings us to our third best practice, Plant native plants, the key to creating healthy habitat for wildlife. Native plants and insects co-evolved over millions of years. Native insects are not adapted to feed on alien plant species, which dominate traditional suburban landscapes. That's one reason they're popular for landscaping. The so-called pests don't eat them. Without the native plants, we won't have the insects. Without the insects, we won't have the birds. The entire food web is based on native plants. Dr. Doug Tallamy has documented the number of caterpillar species hosted by each plant genus. This list shows the best native genera of trees ranked by the numbers of caterpillar species each genus hosts. These native trees are among the keystone species that are critical to the food web. 96% of terrestrial birds rely on insects supported by keystone plants. We recommend these species to our clients for planting, and we help clients identify natives growing in their yards already that they may not recognize or value. Weedy natives like these frost asters are great wildlife plants. Fourth, reduce the use of pesticides and fertilizers. Insecticides destroy terrestrial, aquatic, and soil food webs. Killing off the insects breaks the food chain and deprives birds and other wildlife of food. Fertilizers pollute streams, promote algal growth that depletes oxygen, and create dead zones. We tell clients that if they create healthy habitat, then natural predators control pests and keep things in balance most of the time without insecticides. Native plants don't need fertilizers because they're adapted to native soils. We also do not certify yards where the homeowner uses a broad spectrum mosquito spraying service. It harms bees and other insects and is especially harmful to aquatic invertebrates. On our website, we provide alternative methods for dealing with mosquito problems. Fifth, protect water quality. Development in Northern Virginia has not only fragmented the forest, but also increased stormwater runoff, harming local streams in the Chesapeake Bay. We may advise clients to install a rain barrel or rain garden to intercept and store runoff from their properties. Replacing lawn with native plants and trees also absorbs runoff and nutrients and improves water quality. If a property is on a waterway, a homeowner can reduce runoff by planting or preserving a vegetated riparian buffer, in the process creating excellent habitat. Sixth best practice, reduce the area covered by lawn. When consulting with someone who wants to begin gardening for wildlife, an ambassador typically helps the client identify a specific area of lawn to convert and recommend suitable native plantings. We recommend starting small. Tackling an entire yard all at once is daunting. For example, this before photo shows a suburban home with a large and patchy lawn. Here, the homeowner has removed turf from a section of it, and he's replaced it with native plants that provide habitat as well as privacy and beauty. Seventh best practice is to create structure. We ask clients to look at their properties in a more big picture way to assess whether they have layers and vertical structure that provide shelter and habitat niches for diverse wildlife species, and to connect the habitat they're creating to nearby natural areas. Different species use different layers to forage, nest, and shelter. Creating layers increases the number and diversity of wildlife species that can be supported in the same space. In addition to recommending habitat improvements, ambassadors also visit and certify yards as wildlife sanctuaries. To be eligible, Homeowners must have adopted 2 or more of the habitat best practices in the Healthy Yard Pledge and plan to adopt all of them. They must have 2 habitat features. Finally, they have to observe 10 sanctuary species actually using their yard. If the animals show up and use a yard, then it's habitat. Our motto is, let the critters decide. This requirement to document the animals gets people paying attention to the wild inhabitants of their backyards and their needs and their behavior. It's what distinguishes our program from others that just involve checklists. The 42 sanctuary species all breed in Northern Virginia. They represent different habitats: wetland, grassland, forest, and edge. Most have a decent chance of showing up in a suburban yard. For all of them, there are things homeowners can do to create habitat to support them. There are 5 butterflies or moths and 9 other invertebrates. There are 4 reptiles, 2 amphibians, and 3 mammals. And finally, there are 19 bird species or species groups. The website has links where you can learn about each sanctuary species, its habitat requirements, and what you can do to support it in your yard. After the requirements are met and a property is certified, homeowners can buy a nice yard sign. These represent a real achievement. Only about 15% of visits result in certification. These signs, posted on properties all over Northern Virginia, are one way that people learn about our program. This map shows the 1,033 properties we've certified in Northern Virginia as of April 1st, 2024, representing 8,646 acres. By adding more dots, our clients continue to expand available habitat and create connections and corridors for wildlife. Thank you for your interest in the Wildlife Sanctuary Program.